So what brings us here today?
We're going to learn how to fight.
All right. All you are trying to do is to create and express advantage.
Which means what?
Yeah, so you got to figure out.
Okay.
but it's the only thing you're trying to figure out. Right now, you're neither creating or expressing advantage.
But how do I stand? Help me. Does it matter?
You can stand with me if you want, or you can stand with me.
Okay.
But that's all you got to do.
Okay.
It's find a way to create and express advantage.
Okay. And I don't know. Okay.
But so, yeah, you're here to learn how to fight.
Yeah.
We talked about this a little bit before, that, this is, a public venue. We're not inviting anybody out there to speculate on your personal life. It's one of those things that most annoys me about social media is people are like, oh, this person's on the internet, therefore their whole life is an open book for me. And it's just like, no, like people show up and establish a context, and that's the context in which they want to engage. So in the context of studying self-defense, learning how to fight, in a classical martial arts context, what would you like to share about why you're interested in this right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I feel like it's important to note, like, I have no training whatsoever, other than the brief classes that I've taken with you and the other dojo.
How many classes do you think in total you've done?
Like 5, maybe?
5 total classes. Is that including
classes.
range days?
6.
Okay. So not a lot of classes. Yeah.
Yeah, so not a lot of classes. And a few of those classes were also really spaced out over several months to like a year or two. So oftentimes I can feel like I'm coming right back into it, and it's hard for me to remember all the things that I'm attempting to learn. So this is really like, I want to be in dedication to discipline in a way that I feel like I haven't necessarily been able to healthily identify with like discipline in the past. So I really want to like move forward in a way that feels like integrity and like, or coming from a place of integrity, and that I can actually like see improvement. And I'm not attached to that looking like any particular way. It's more of like a feeling, I think, for me. But so other than those classes, I've never taken any kind of like martial arts. I was homeschooled, so my extent of doing like group sports activities were like capture the flag field days that ended in us like all playing video games or something,
Right.
And I rode horses, stuff like that. So but I have like a pretty active lifestyle, so I just want to like hone in on.
Yeah, so you're not coming in having never moved in a coordinated way. Yeah. Which sometimes does happen. People will come in and they've never really done much of anything, like in terms of there's a dynamic that comes up in any kind of like especially in contact sport, but even any athletic or just game type, like physical game where there's multiple players. So tag, hide and go seek, that kind of, soccer definitely. Like there's this thing where like your joints actually kind of learn how to like rebound and respond to like new stimulus. Like you and your body can do this kind of like bouncing, changing direction thing. And every now and then somebody comes in who like, basically like didn't play as a child, and they can't do that thing. And it's like, it's really wild to be like, wait, whoa, like you don't know how to respond to another person's movement. And that's one of those like really fundamental skills that I don't think is, anything that doesn't have a score attached to it in school, people like forget about as being a fundamental skill. And that's one of them. So you're coming in, you have experienced using your body in the world, in nature a lot, with other people.
Yeah, because
but
a lot of times,
yeah,
I mean, I was outside like every single day as a kid, pretty much, and climbing trees and rolling down hills and
yeah.
getting into all kinds of like.
Did you ever skateboard?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
I like really practiced longboarding for a while, and then
Mm.
I rollerbladed. I did ice skating for a
Okay.
while.
Yeah.
So those things, like, but to me, so I feel like the mobility isn't as foreign, but it's I think the like you're speaking to like the ability to actually like respond to someone else's movements because those are all like very independent
Mm-hmm.
things, like horseback riding, like all of that, is response to a thing, but it's not like a person necessarily.
Sure. Sure.
So that feels like the coordination of another body with
Mm-hmm.
my body feels challenging sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm someone who like I want to get it right on the first try.
You
And
have
it's
to give
like,
that up.
yeah, exactly, which has really helped, like
Yeah.
especially in the last couple of weeks when I've talked a lot about just like, your intention of coming in is to just like mess up, you're supposed
Mm-hmm.
to fail. So that's been really helpful to
Yeah.
like be like, oh yeah, like I don't have to
Yeah.
get it right.
No expectation of that.
Yeah.
I asked about skating actually because skaters have, in my experience, done particularly well in this school and in this system. And my belief is that it's the skater diet. It's like the ability to eat shit and not take it personally.
Yeah.
Which is another one of those things where sometimes people will come in. We had one student who was horrified of falling, and Kamari that we were talking about earlier. He was just like, that just won't do. You want to be here, you have to fall. And he actually brought in like a dozen like big fluffy like bed pillows and put them on top of the like we have like that little crash mat. We had a slightly bigger one that was blue for a long time, and so we had that mat, which was what most people learned to fall on, and he created this like it was basically like a very small version of like a gymnastics school like foam pit.
Yeah.
And he's just like, you're gonna fall into this thing, like it's like it was barely a fall at all because it was so big that she was kind of like and he just slowly took them away one by one. But it was really interesting watching somebody attracted to this system very much wanting to stay with it, but just like, oh, I can't fall. And it's just like, yo, we do throws here, like do you know what happens when someone throws you? Like and so yeah, like nobody really likes falling. You never like it, but it does happen.
No, it doesn't feel good. And I mean, I've only ever fallen off of a horse once, like fully fallen.
Did you get back on the horse?
No, because the horse ran off.
Oh, the horse ran off. Okay, so
there
wasn't an option.
But yes, I did get back on the horse.
Okay. Once you got up to the horse.
Yeah, once I got up to the horse went all the way back to the barn. I was on a trail ride.
Okay.
I was by myself, and a storm came out of nowhere, and this big, just like lightning strike happened, and the horse just bolted, and my saddle got loose, and I ended up falling right off, and it knocked me out. It was a really, really bad fall. I had to walk like 2 miles back to the barn. It sucked in the rain. And, but I like really, it was good for me because I was good at it. So I didn't fall very often. And I knew how to like recover from almost falling as well. So like correcting my position, things like that. But so yeah, it's like, gotta learn to fall, gotta learn to fail. It's all good stuff.
Cool. There is one part of this conversation happens with every new student, and you and I have already had this conversation, but just for the audience, just kind of to iterate, or I guess it's reiterating with us to, for the audience to put this out there. Whenever somebody comes into the school, I believe it's very important to ask the question, like, are you safe now? And it's kind of the same as like if you call 911, they'll say like, what is your emergency? And then depending on what you say next, their follow-up question is immediately like, are you in a safe place to be having this conversation? Some variant on that. And so when somebody comes in the school and they're like, I want to learn self-defense, it's like, okay, is this because there's somebody who chased you in here today and like you're in immediate fear for your life because nothing we do in here works immediately? So I'd ask the question, do you feel like you are in immediate danger and we need to create a safety plan before we start training?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think in some ways we have.
We've had this conversation.
Yeah. So, yeah, this is like, how much do you want to share?
You're totally welcome to just be like, yeah, I'm safe, or you can share as much as you want.
Yeah. Well, no, I think it's important too, because it's like, you know, I think there's that line to dance of vulnerability and also like assisting other people, you know, too. But yeah, I mean, I think right in this particular moment, yeah, I'm safe. I'm good.
As safe as you can be in a room full of weapons.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, yeah, exactly. But, you know, even when I went to the sister dojo, which would you call it, a sister dojo?
Sure.
Is that
Yeah,
like
it's a reasonable thing to call it. Yeah.
Sure. You know, with teacher there at Kaihio, I had initially gone about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago now, because I was feeling like really unsafe. And at the time, I didn't realize like how unsafe I really potentially was, which was kind of scary. But I mean, I'm in my life, like, I mean, I've been sexually assaulted, hurt by primarily like male-bodied people most of the time, and has had an experience in an abusive relationship this last year where things got scary in a way that I felt like I needed to really learn how to defend myself and the people I love. And I feel like with how the world has just always been changing, I don't feel capable right now to show up and actually successfully take care of myself and the people around me in ways that I would like to. So I feel like coming here and wanting to dedicate myself to this is kind of just like almost like a love letter to myself and you know, to the world, really, of like, yeah, like this is serious. I want to come in and, you know, learn to the best of my ability.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that perspective. There was a while where we the school had one dedicated evening that was just for women and trans folk, and we got some pushback from some people who, you know, other martial artists who had trained in the Krakatoa Ryu but weren't members of Fortify, and they were just like, that reads like just a like no straight men allowed class, right. And their pushback was articulate and well reasoned. It was, you know, like straight men actually experience the most violence and all these different things. But we had developed a curriculum in partnership with the organization that was at that time called the Colorado Anti-Violence Project, but later changed their name to Survivors Organizing Liberation, partially because of our collaboration and them not being able to say that they were anti-violence anymore, strictly speaking, because, you know, place and time, and, you know, all things consensual, and in that program, we developed this curriculum that was really maybe a better way of naming it, or a more accurate way of naming it, would have been Defense Against Predatory Violence. And the fact of the matter is, while men experience far and away almost like all the violence, when you include professional violence, almost all the violence that occurs is just between men. Yeah. It's most of that violence is professional in one degree or another. It's muggings, it's you know, war, you know, crime, you know, those kinds of things. And predatory violence takes different shapes. It has different intentions, and it really merits its own pedagogy. And there's a lot of crossover, and in terms of technique, you know, all the fundamentals are the same, but the nuances that are different between like professional occupational violence and then also the other kind of violence that men experience is like the like brutish, immature expressions of, you know, a certain kind of masculinity or just rage. Um, those two things, and those are different than each other. Like people raging out is very different than someone who is trying to achieve an objective. But both of those things are very different than predatory violence. And so we had that class, and then in the first pushback we got was from people who were like, "Why do you have a class that's just not for straight men?" And then the second pushback we got was from the other side, which was, "This is victim blaming." And when just now you had framed this as like, this is something you're doing to show love for yourself, which I think is just it's certainly a more functional way of looking at it, but it's also, I think, a more optimistic, more pro-human way of looking at it. It's nothing that we do in here is to take the fault or blame off of people who do wrong things. But that's also like deciding who is at fault and who is to blame is just not the medium in which we work. That's just not, it's not our responsibility to, you know, decide who's, aside from the people who come into this room, we don't worry about who else is at fault for anything while we're in this room, because it just doesn't help us to do what we need to do to become people who are capable of dealing with crises and being an asset to other people in crises. And so it's very difficult to have those conversations sometimes, because a person's just like, why is it that you're making women spend all this time and money, you know, going to the range is expensive and like all those things, and it's like, it's smelly and it's gross and it's loud and it's bad for your hearing, and like coming in here, it's like at some point you're gonna twist a toe on the mat, like at some point you're gonna it's gonna hurt, it sucks, it's very uncomfortable. At the bare minimum, it's like you leave and you're sore, and it's like, and so some of that's very, very healthful and productive. You do get stronger, your cardio gets better, you get all those things. But at the same time, it's like, it's a lot of time. It is uncomfortable, it's painful. And so the pushback that we got was, why are you putting all that on the victim? And it's just like I didn't put it, and the school doesn't. The concept, the theory doesn't. It's not that we want, like, we did not create a situation, and I want to say we wouldn't create a situation where we make the victims responsible for doing all the work to prevent a thing, but it's just like, it's just so out of scope of what a human can prefer. It's the shape of the world. It's like, you know, like a gazelle is responsible for running away from a mountain lion. That's just the shape of existence. And if the gazelle doesn't run away, it's lunch. And like, does that suck? It absolutely sucks. You know, sometimes, like, is it wrong? I think is one of those things where like people, I see this question get bantered around. I mean, the most extreme version, you know, I love Stephen Fry, but he's got his whole bit on like the world is wrong and there can be no benevolent God because there's bone cancer in children. And it's just like, we are not things that are scoped to hold that opinion. Is actually, I mean, even if that's not somebody else's position, I promise you that when you're in the middle of the mat, that has to be your position. Is that you have to not see it as your responsibility to have a preference on how the world works. You just have to perform. And you like, there's this like place, and you know, obviously, like for someone like me who dedicates so much time to this, like I hear those kinds of complaints and criticisms of the world, and I'm just like, how do you get up in the morning? Like, how do you do anything? Like, because if you take that same line of thinking, like, God, bone cancer in children, everything's fucked. It's just like, if you take that to the limit, the same line of reasoning is just like, why do I have to brush my teeth? Like, why am I responsible for fighting these bacteria? What did I do to have, you know, to have this burden of responsibility? And if I don't do this thing, and that seems hyperbolic, but it's like, what's actually really I mean, like, there are many steps, but there's no change in kind of thinking. It's like, why do we, because the way of expressing that, like that issue with bone cancer in children, is like saying, like, why do we have to fight cancer and research medicine, right, to prevent pain and suffering in the world? It's the same line of reasoning, it's just a different scale. Or the, like, why did God let the Holocaust happen? And it's just like, we did it. Like, humans did all of that shit on purpose. Like, and it's like, well, but the people that it happened to didn't make it happen. And it's just like, well, every person is an individual, but we're a meta organism. And I think we've talked about this a lot. It's like, we're all these nested holes, and this is getting really big for but I think it's actually, I think it's relevant, because, you know, we are essentially responsible. Like, the way that we try to treat this discipline is like, we are not a separate entity from the person that we might end up in a conflict with, you know, whatever kind of conflict that is, and whatever we have to do in that conflict. We're separate individuals, and at one scale, yeah, we're separate. But if you take that same scale and go one scale lower, it's like, well, there's this whole chunk of, you know, frontal cortex and prefrontal cortex, and it's basically a separate organism from all of the associative thinking monkey brain stuff that sits behind it, which is basically a separate organism from all the reptilian avian brain stuff that sits under that. Like, those are all different individuals. They have different desires, different interests, different needs. They have different ages when you think about their development. By millions of years, they're separated. They're different people, and they're all just inside this one hunk of rock, and etc. And the gut, the whole gut biome is probably older, even functionally older even than the reptilian. And like, they have to get along, and that's a community. And then I, as an individual, am that community. And there's not that much difference between the community that I am and the community that I'm a part of. And that community sits inside of a larger meta-organism, And when we get into conflicts, it's not that much different than the cognitive dissonance that we experience inside of the community that is us. Because people experience enormous suffering in the conflicts up here. And people experience enormous suffering in the conflicts between individuals. And I assert that it's the same suffering. It's the same kind of suffering. And sometimes the right thing to do is to let one of those individuals go. And sometimes that letting go is a little forceful, because that's the best thing to do for the meta-organism. But that doesn't mean that we're not still connected, that we're not still like the same, which is a very different take in terms of looking at conflict, especially violence, as a school that's just like, yeah, sometimes you got to shoot a guy. Like, it's a hard thing to say in the same breath as saying, like, yeah, but he's also you.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and like, I think a lot of people won't go there when they're talking about learning to, you know, to do physical harm to people, ideally for the sake of the greater meta-organism. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? I'm rambling.
Yeah, no, you're not rambling. It's all really relevant and potent. Yeah, I mean, I think, like, when you're speaking to, you know, yeah, we're all the same. Like, that's me who I'm like fighting. Like, there's such a mirror. And I think we're seeing this right now. I know we talked about this recently too, is I think we're seeing like greater internal systems amplify themselves in the way that the world is functioning right now. And I think we have a violence and an aversion to like death and hardship and suffering, and we have these like relationships with them that haven't necessarily been potentially guided in ways that they might have used to, like having the shaman in the village, or having the priest, or having, yes, we have those things, but they're just not as accessible. And so we sort of have to be our own guides. And in addition to this like compounded like trauma and stress, and we're just trying to like make our way in the world, and that's really hard. And I don't know, I guess, thinking to also this like responsibility piece, like, yeah, the world is just how it is right now. And I think claiming responsibility is really hard to do, for so many different reasons. And, it feels like oftentimes I feel like I see this, and I use this as an example with like conspiracy theories. I love a good conspiracy theory, but when it comes to like, oh, there's like one lizard person who's in the dark room that's like controlling everything around, I think it's, and controlling war and the death of children and all of this stuff, and we're just living in a simulation. I think it's a really easy way to like escape the fact that like people are doing this to people, and that we are just like in conflict with each other, and we don't know how to be in that conflict in a good way, because it's just going to happen. It's going to be there no matter what. And so I feel like being here, it's like, yeah, this is like how to learn conflict in a good way. And, I think to some of the situations that I've been in too, where it's like, I've definitely been in places where I have majorly thought of myself as like a victim in a way that was like very unhealthy. And then too far on the other side where, it's like, I don't want help from anybody, or like I'm totally blocked off and good. So, and maybe that's not completely on the other side of something, but I think of it, it's like the situations that I've been in where it's like getting sexually assaulted. Like that person, if I had known different skills, like could I have gotten them off of me? Maybe, I don't know. It happened, and I can only like learn from that and move forward and take the responsibility of being like, well, if that were to happen again, which it's possible, what can I do to prepare myself to make sure that I can like have the best fighting chance in the world, and it doesn't feel good sometimes. Like I wish I didn't have to like walk around thinking about that, but we do. So am I gonna just like be upset about it, and like spend all of my energy focusing in on like why I wish it wasn't so, instead of changing my behavior in my own personal world?
Yeah.
And trying to focus in on that, and like creating the joy I want to feel and experience in addition to protecting myself. And I think something in here too is like being a part of both of the dojos. Like it really is such a tight community and family, and like I feel so in this experience of going through exiting the situation that I've been in, like so well cared for and considered. And that's not always the case. And I mean, I think too, this is like definitely a very like male dominated space for sure, at least in my own experience. Like I've never in the past, I've wanted to sign up for different martial arts classes, and it's all guys. And, like I think that that's great. And as someone who does have trauma, it's like, oh, I don't actually want to be in a closed space with 15 people that I don't know that are really capable of doing damage. And so one of the draws to the dojo, to the other dojo, is that it was all, at the time, all women. And, we had to like invite other people in, and everyone consented to whether that was like an option, which I know you all do something similar here. But I really appreciated that, because it felt like it was open to everybody, but it was taken really seriously why people come in. And that I felt like just changed my perspective on wanting to show up, and like moving past the uncomfortability of like moving your body in really challenging ways, and like getting hit, and like it, yeah, like brings up all kinds of stuff. So
yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that.
Yeah, thank you for listening.
Of course.
Yeah, thank you for sharing what you shared as well.